Hi, today we're talking about love, the last characteristic in the characteristics we've been studying out of 2 Peter. So let me begin by reading that passage and then we're going to dive in. It's 2 Peter chapter 1. I'm reading verses 3 and then 5 through 7. For his divine power has bestowed upon us all things that are requisite and suited to life and godliness through the full personal knowledge of him who called us by and to his own glory and excellence. For this very reason, adding your diligence to the divine promises, employ every effort in exercising your faith to develop virtue, and in virtue develop knowledge, and in exercising knowledge develop self-control, and in exercising self-control develop steadfastness, your patient in endurance, and in exercising steadfastness develop godliness, and in exercising godliness develop brotherly affection, and in exercising brotherly affection, develop Christian love. That's what we're talking about today, this Christian love that God develops in our life. And when I think of love, I think of these things right here. Those are the first things that pop into mind. I think of the things that I love. I love my coffee. I love my chocolate. I think of stuff like that. I also think of the times that I get to spend with my girlfriends, and I love that time, just being able to do life together and share life together. I always think of my husband, who is my best friend, and how much that I love him. And then I think of just that warm, fuzzy feeling we get when we think about love and the things and the people that we love. But this passage of scripture is not talking about that kind of love at all. It's talking about an agape love, a godly love, a Christian love that we are really challenged to develop and to exercise in our life. The definition of love, of agape love, is God doing what is best for man regardless of his desires. And if you think about that definition of love, it takes love to a whole new level. That God is doing for us what is absolutely best for us regardless of what we desire. And I've put together this graphic of the characteristics that we've been studying. And as you look at this and think about the choices that we make along the way that will cultivate these characteristics in our life. When we understand God's love for us, God is doing what is absolutely best for us regardless of what we desire. When we understand that, or when we look at life through that lens of this is God's love towards me, we have a choice to make. And the choice is, do I believe it? Do I believe that God is in control? Do I believe he's in this circumstance? Do I believe he's got me in this situation? Or don't I? And so if we exercise our faith, which is the first characteristic that we are told in 2 Peter to develop, then we are choosing to believe that God's love is evidence in my life and that he is in control. And as we exercise our faith, as we choose to believe that, it pushes us to the next characteristic, which is moral excellence. As we exercise moral excellence in the situation of life that we are in, then it increases and grows our knowledge of God, understanding that God is in control. And as we walk in that knowledge, as we exercise that knowledge, it pushes us to behave in a certain way, and that's to practice self-control. As we exercise our self-control, it pushes us and helps us to be patient and to endure through the circumstances that we are in. So as we exercise that, it pushes us to behave godly, and we live our lives in godliness. And as we exercise godliness, we have the ability to reach out to those around us and to focus on other people and to practice brotherly affection. And as we practice that brotherly affection and as we cultivate brotherly affection, it brings us right back to understanding that this is the love of God, that God has what is absolutely our best interest at heart, and he's working in these circumstances to bring about that best. And it pushes us to respond again in faith and to respond again with moral excellence. And the cycle continues and continues to grow and to develop us as we put our faith and trust in the love of God. So there are some verses in Ephesians that I think really help us to understand what that love of God looks like for us, and how we come to just accept that this is the love of God and to understand it. So let me read that for you. It's Ephesians chapter 3, and it's verses 17 through 19, and this is what it says. May Christ, through your faith, actually dwell, settle down, abide, make his permanent home in your hearts. May you be rooted deep in love and founded securely on love. that you may have power and be strong to apprehend and grasp with all the saints, God's devoted people, the experience of that love. What is the breadth and length and height and depth of it? That you may really come to know practically through experience for yourselves the love of Christ, which far surpasses mere knowledge without experience. That you may be filled through all your being unto all the fullness of God, may have the richest measure of the divine presence and become a body wholly filled and flooded with God Himself. That is the prayer that Paul has for the people in Ephesus when he wrote this, that they would understand the love of God to the point that they become wholly filled and flooded with God Himself. When I was reading these verses the other day, I grabbed my journal and this is what I wrote. And I just want to close in this because this really is our prayer for each of you, that you would understand the love of God on a level that just fills you and floods you with God Himself. And this is what I wrote. When I experience God's love, it puts actions to my knowledge. It moves God from my head to my heart. When I experience the faithfulness of God, it roots me in His love. I am rooted. When I experience the blessings of God, it secures me in His love, and I am secure. When I experience the presence of God, it fills me with His love. I am filled with the very presence of God Himself. The love of Christ roots me, founds me, secures me. My experience with God tells me that I am on the verge of understanding just how wide, how deep, how long, how tall His love is for me. I can be known. I am known. I can know the love of God for me. To know God's love is more than head knowledge, it's a heart experience. God fills me. He fills me to overflowing with Himself, with the very presence of God Himself. God fills me with a rich measure of Himself, His divine presence in me. This is the love of God, to be wholly filled and flooded with God Himself. Our prayer for you today is that you would experience God in such a way that your heart and your life would be filled and flooded with the very presence of God Himself.